Welcome to a mind-bending journey through some of the most perplexing paradoxes known to humanity. Tonight, we're diving deep into the realm of philosophical conundrums that have puzzled thinkers for centuries. These aren't just abstract concepts. They're mental exercises that challenge our understanding of reality, time, and existence itself. So, get comfortable, dim the lights, and prepare to have your mind twisted in ways you never thought possible. From ancient Greek philosophy to modern scientific theories, we're about to explore paradoxes that will make you question everything you thought you knew. Are you ready to fall down this rabbit hole of logic and contradiction? Let us begin our descent into the world of paradoxes that just might change the way you see the universe. Our first stop on this journey is the famous paradox of Achilles and the tortoise. Imagine the legendary Greek hero Achilles, known for his speed, racing against a humble tortoise. To give the tortoise a fair chance, Achilles allows it a head start. Now, here's where things get interesting. By the time Achilles reaches the tortoise's starting point, the tortoise will have moved forward. When Achilles reaches that new point, the tortoise will have moved again. This process continues infinitely, with Achilles always catching up to where the tortoise was, but never quite reaching it. Logically, it seems Achilles can never overtake the tortoise. Yet, in reality, we know he would. This paradox challenges our understanding of infinity and continuous motion, leaving us to ponder the nature of space and time. Next, we venture into the realm of time travel with the grandfather paradox. Picture this. You invent a time machine and decide to travel back in time to prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother. If you succeed, you would never be born. But if you were never born, how could you travel back in time to prevent your grandparents from meeting? This circular logic creates a paradox that seems to defy the very laws of cause and effect. It raises profound questions about the nature of time, free will, and the possibility of changing the past. Some theorists propose that such an action would create an alternate timeline, while others suggest that the universe would somehow prevent such a paradox from occurring. The grandfather paradox remains a fascinating thought experiment that continues to captivate scientists and philosophers alike. Speaking of time travel, let's explore the mind-bending Bootstrap Paradox. Imagine you're a huge fan of Beethoven's music. One day, you invent a time machine and decide to travel back to meet the great composer. To your shock, you discover that Beethoven doesn't exist in that timeline. In a moment of inspiration, you decide to publish Beethoven's music yourself, using the knowledge you brought from the future. The music becomes famous, and eventually, you travel back in time with it. But here's the question: who really composed the music? It seems to exist in a loop with no clear point of origin. This paradox challenges our linear understanding of time and creativity, suggesting the possibility of information or objects that exist without a clear beginning. Now, let's shift gears and consider a paradox that questions the very nature of identity: the ship of Theseus. Imagine an ancient ship preserved over centuries. Over time, as parts of the ship decay, they are replaced with new ones. Eventually, every single part of the ship has been replaced. Is it still the same ship? What if someone collected all the original parts and reassembled them into a ship? Which one would be the true ship of Theseus? This paradox forces us to confront our understanding of identity and continuity. It applies not just to objects, but to our own bodies and minds, which are constantly changing yet maintain a sense of consistent identity. The ship of Theseus paradox challenges us to consider what truly defines an object or a person as essence. Finally, we'll delve deep into one of the most famous logical paradoxes, the liar paradox. At its simplest, it can be stated as, this sentence is false. If the sentence is true, then it must be false. But if it's false, then it must be true. This creates an endless loop of contradiction that has puzzled logicians for millennia. The liar paradox goes beyond just a clever word game. It strikes at the heart of our understanding of truth, language, and logic itself. Some philosophers have used this paradox to argue that our everyday language is fundamentally flawed when it comes to describing certain concepts. Others have proposed complex logical systems to try and resolve the contradiction. The paradox has implications in fields ranging from mathematics to computer science, where self-referential statements can lead to unexpected results. The liar paradox has many variations and has been the subject of intense study. One interesting version is the Pinocchio Paradox. Imagine if Pinocchio, whose nose grows when he lies, says, "My nose will grow now." If it grows, he was telling the truth, so it shouldn't grow. But if it doesn't grow, he was lying, so it should grow. This playful version illustrates how deeply the paradox is embedded in our concepts of truth and falsehood. Some philosophers have attempted to resolve the liar paradox by introducing the concept of different levels of truth. They argue that the statement, "This sentence is false," is neither simply true nor false, but exists on a different level of meaning altogether. This approach, however, leads to its own set of complications and doesn't fully satisfy all logicians. The paradox also raises questions about the limits of formal logical systems. Kurt Gödel, in his famous incompleteness theorems, used a version of the liar paradox to prove that in any consistent formal system, complex enough to represent basic arithmetic, there are statements that can neither be proved nor disproved within that system. This groundbreaking work had profound implications for mathematics and logic. In computer science, the liar paradox relates to the halting problem, the question of whether a computer program will eventually stop running or continue forever. Alan Turing proved that no algorithm can determine this for all possible program input pairs, using reasoning similar to that of the liar paradox. As we conclude our journey through these mind-bending paradoxes, it's worth reflecting on why they fascinate us so much. Perhaps it's because they challenge our fundamental assumptions about the world. They force us to confront the limits of our logic and understanding. In a universe that often seems chaotic and unpredictable, paradoxes remind us that even our most basic concepts, time, identity, truth, can be more complex than we imagine. These paradoxes aren't just intellectual curiosities. They have real-world implications. The concepts behind the ship of Theseus paradox, for instance, play a role in legal and ethical debates about identity and personhood. Time travel paradoxes like the grandfather paradox inform our understanding of causality and have inspired countless works of science fiction. As you drift off to sleep tonight, let these paradoxes swirl in your mind. They may not have clear solutions, but that's part of their beauty. They remind us to question our assumptions, to think critically, and to embrace the mystery and complexity of the universe. Who knows? Perhaps in your dreams, you'll unravel one of these ancient puzzles or stumble upon a paradox of your own. Sweet dreams, and may your thoughts be ever paradoxical. 6. The Sorites Paradox. Imagine you're on a beach, and you've got a heap of sand in front of you. Now, if you take away one grain of sand, you still have a heap, right? But what if you keep taking away grains one by one? At what point does it stop being a heap? This, my friends, is the Sorites Paradox. The word Sorites comes from the Greek word for heap, and this paradox is all about the vagueness of language. It's not just about sand, either. You could apply it to anything that changes gradually. Like, when does a person become old? When do a few hairs become a beard? When does a town become a city? The paradox arises because our language isn't precise enough to capture these gradual changes. We use words like heap or old as if there is a clear line between what is and isn't, but reality is much more fuzzy. Some philosophers have tried to solve this by saying there's a precise cutoff point. We just don't know where it is. Others say it's all about context. What counts as a heap depends on the situation. But no matter how you slice it, the Sorites Paradox keeps messing with our heads. 7. The Crocodile Paradox. Picture this. You're in ancient Egypt, and a crocodile has snatched your child. The croc, being surprisingly talkative, makes you a deal. He says, if you can guess correctly whether or not I will return your child, I'll give them back. But if you guess wrong, I'll keep them. Now, here's where it gets tricky. If you say, you will not return my child, the crocodile is in a bind. If he doesn't return the child, your guess was correct, so he should return the child. But if he does return the child, your guess was wrong, so he shouldn't return the child. It's a loop with no clear solution. This paradox is all about self-reference and prediction. It's similar to the liar paradox, where someone says, this sentence is false. If it's true, it's false. And if it's false, it's true. The crocodile paradox takes this mind-bending logic and puts it into a high-stakes scenario. Some have tried to resolve it by saying the crocodile's promise is meaningless or self-contradictory. Others argue that it shows the limits of logical reasoning. But no matter how you look at it, it's a paradox that'll make your brain do backflips. 8. The Raven Paradox. Also known as Hempel's Paradox, this one's about logic and evidence. Carl Hempel, a philosopher, came up with it to show how weird scientific confirmation can be. Here's the deal. The statement, all ravens are black, is logically equivalent to, all non-black things are not ravens. So far, so good. But here's where it gets funky. If you see a black raven, it supports the first statement. But if you see a red apple, it also supports the second statement, which is equivalent to the first. So technically, seeing a red apple gives you evidence that all ravens are black. Weird, right? It seems to suggest that you could study ornithology by looking at your fruit bowl. This paradox challenges our intuitions about evidence and confirmation. It makes us question what counts as relevant evidence for a hypothesis. Some philosophers have tried to resolve it by talking about degrees of confirmation or by refining our ideas of what counts as evidence. But the Raven Paradox remains a thorn in the side of simple ideas about scientific confirmation. It shows that logic can lead us to conclusions that feel deeply counterintuitive. 9. The Card Paradox. Imagine you have a card. On one side it says, the statement on the other side of this card is true. You flip it over and it says, the statement on the other side of this card is false. Now your brain's probably starting to hurt. If the first statement is true, then the second must be true, which means the first is false. But if the first is false, then the second must be false, which means the first is true. It's an endless loop of contradiction. This paradox is another example of self-reference causing logical headaches. It's similar to the famous liar paradox, where someone says, the sentence is false. But the card paradox adds an extra layer by splitting the contradiction across two sides of a card. Some philosophers have argued that sentences like these are meaningless or ill-formed. Others have developed complex logical systems to try and handle these kinds of self-referential statements. But for most of us, the card paradox remains a delightful brain teaser that shows how language and logic can tie themselves in knots. 10. The Pinocchio Paradox. Let's end with a paradox that brings a bit of childhood magic into the world of logic. Imagine Pinocchio, the wooden puppet whose nose grows when he lies, says, my nose will grow now. If he's telling the truth, his nose won't grow, which makes his statement a lie, which should make his nose grow. But if his nose grows, then he was telling the truth, which means his nose shouldn't have grown. This paradox is another example of self-reference, creating logical impossibilities. It's particularly fun because it uses the specific rules of Pinocchio's world to create a contradiction. It shows that even in a fantasy world with clear rules, we can find logical puzzles that break those rules. Some have argued that this paradox shows the impossibility of perfect truth-telling devices. Others have used it to explore ideas about the nature of truth and lie detection. But mostly, it's a playful way to show how even simple rules can lead to mind-bending contradictions. These paradoxes, from heaps of sand to lying puppets, all share a common thread. They push at the edges of our logical systems, showing where our language and our reasoning start to break down. They remind us that the world is often more complex and nuanced than our words and thoughts can easily capture. But don't let that keep you up at night. Instead, let these paradoxes lull you into a peaceful sleep, knowing that even the greatest minds have grappled with these puzzles. As you drift off, imagine Pinocchio trying to tell the truth about his growing nose, or a crocodile pondering whether to return a child based on a prediction. These paradoxes aren't just mental gymnastics. They're reminders of the beauty and complexity of thought itself. They show us the limits of our understanding, and in doing so, they open up new ways of thinking about the world. So as you close your eyes, let these paradoxes swirl in your mind. Let them remind you that the world is full of wonder and mystery, even in the realm of pure thought. And who knows? Maybe in your dreams, you'll find the solutions that have eluded philosophers for centuries. Sweet dreams, and may your thoughts be paradoxically peaceful. 11. The Wisdom Paradox. The more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. It is a peculiar phenomenon that occurs as we expand our knowledge and understanding of the world around us. As we delve deeper into various subjects, we begin to uncover the vast complexity and interconnectedness of information. This realization can be both humbling and inspiring, pushing us to continue our pursuit of knowledge while acknowledging the limitless nature of what there is to learn. Consider a novice musician who begins learning an instrument. At first, they may feel a sense of accomplishment as they master basic chords and melodies. However, as they progress, they discover the intricacies of music theory, the nuances of different genres, and the countless techniques used by master musicians. Suddenly, what once seemed like a straightforward skill becomes an endless journey of discovery and improvement. This paradox extends to all areas of life, from academic pursuits to personal growth. The more we learn about ourselves, others, and the world, the more we recognize the depth of what we have yet to explore. It's a reminder that true wisdom lies not in knowing everything, but in understanding the vastness of what we don't know. 12. The Productivity Paradox. Working longer hours doesn't always result in more being accomplished. This counterintuitive concept challenges our traditional notions of productivity and success. In a world that often equates busyness with effectiveness, it's crucial to understand that quantity of time spent doesn't necessarily translate to quality of output. Research has shown that after a certain point, typically around 40 hours per week, productivity begins to decline. Fatigue sets in, decision-making abilities deteriorate, and creativity wanes. Yet many of us continue to push ourselves beyond these limits, believing that more hours will lead to better results. Consider a writer working on a novel. Spending 12 hours a day at the keyboard might seem like a recipe for rapid progress. However, mental exhaustion can lead to poor word choices, plot inconsistencies, and a lack of innovative ideas. In contrast, a well-rested writer working for fewer, more focused hours might produce higher quality work and make steadier progress over time. This paradox encourages us to prioritize efficiency over sheer effort. It's about working smarter, not just harder. By focusing on quality over quantity, taking regular breaks, and maintaining a healthy work-life balance, we can often achieve more in less time. 13. The Speed Paradox. Sometimes slowing down allows for greater efficiency and progress in the long run. This concept challenges our fast-paced, instant gratification culture, reminding us that haste doesn't always make waste. Sometimes it creates it. Imagine a student cramming for an exam, rapidly skimming through textbooks and notes. While they may cover a lot of material quickly, their retention and understanding are likely to be superficial. In contrast, a student who takes a slower, more methodical approach, engaging deeply with the material over time, is more likely to develop a comprehensive understanding that lasts beyond the test. This paradox applies to various aspects of life, from personal development to business strategies. Companies that take the time to thoroughly research and plan their initiatives often outperform those that rush to market with half-baked ideas. Similarly, individuals who invest time in developing strong foundations and skills or relationships often find greater long-term success than those who seek quick fixes or shortcuts. By embracing the speed paradox, we learn to value patience and thoroughness. It's a reminder that sustainable progress often requires a measured, thoughtful approach rather than a frantic race to the finish line. 14. The money paradox. You might need to invest or even lose some money to potentially gain more in the future. This concept challenges our instinctive desire to hold on to what we have, revealing that sometimes letting go is the key to abundance. Consider the entrepreneur who invests their life savings into a startup. From one perspective, they're risking everything. But from another, they're creating the potential for exponential growth and returns. Similarly, a student taking on debt for education is making a calculated bet that their increased earning potential will outweigh the initial cost. This paradox extends beyond financial investments. We see it in personal growth, where investing time and resources in developing new skills can lead to better opportunities. We see it in relationships, where being generous with our time and energy can cultivate deeper, more rewarding connections. The money paradox teaches us to think long-term and to recognize that value isn't always immediately apparent. It encourages us to view certain expenses as investments in our future selves rather than mere losses. 15. In an age of 24/7 news cycles and constant information streams, this paradox challenges our assumptions about staying informed. At first glance, it might seem that the more news we consume, the more knowledgeable we become about the world around us. However, the reality is often quite different. The rapid-fire nature of modern news, with its focus on breaking stories and sensational headlines, can lead to information overload and a superficial understanding of complex issues. Moreover, the algorithms that curate our news feeds often create echo chambers, reinforcing our existing beliefs rather than challenging them. This can lead to a false sense of understanding, where we mistake familiarity with a topic for genuine comprehension. Consider someone who spends hours each day scrolling through news apps and social media feeds. They might feel well-informed, but their knowledge could be fragmented, lacking context and depth. In contrast, someone who reads fewer articles but engages more deeply with long-form journalism or academic sources might develop a more nuanced understanding of current events and their underlying causes. The news paradox reminds us to be mindful of our media consumption habits. It encourages us to seek quality over quantity, to engage critically with the information we receive, and to recognize the limitations of our own knowledge. As we reflect on these paradoxes, we are reminded of the complexity of the world around us and the often counterintuitive nature of progress and understanding. The wisdom paradox teaches us humility in the face of vast knowledge. The productivity paradox challenges us to work smarter, not just harder. The speed paradox reminds us of the value of patience and thoroughness. The money paradox encourages us to think long-term and see beyond immediate losses. And the news paradox prompts us to be more discerning in our information consumption. These paradoxes, seemingly contradictory at first glance, offer profound insights into how we can navigate our personal and professional lives more effectively. They invite us to question our assumptions, to look beyond surface-level understanding, and to embrace the complexity of the world around us. As you drift off to sleep, Consider how these paradoxes might apply to your own life. How might embracing them lead to new perspectives and opportunities? Remember, it is often in the spaces between what we think we know that true wisdom and growth can be found. Let these paradoxes guide you towards a more nuanced understanding of yourself and the world around you as you journey into the realm of dreams and possibilities.